الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة ويا عبرة كل مؤمن ومؤمنة يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والذين يقولون ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Youth that are born from the years 1997 to 2012 are considered Generation Z. Many of us have children from the ages of 12 to 25. Many parents. Or there are some youth that fall into this category of the age of 12 up to the age of 25. Unfortunately, youth born in this age do not come with a manual. They do not come with an instruction packet. How to be parented, how to be taught, how do you teach them? How do you parent them? There's no course on parenting Generation Z. There's books on so-and-so for dummies, physics for dummies, mathematics for dummies, but there's no parenting Generation Z for dummies. It comes with experience. Parenting comes with experience, especially Generation Z. It comes with experience. It comes with trial and error. You could fail, you could succeed. It comes with trying different strategies. It comes with experience. The problem is that some parents don't understand what it means to be part of Generation Z. For them, a child is a child, a youth is a youth. How they parented previous children, they'll parent this child as well, born from Generation Z. For them, it doesn't make a difference. Parenting is parenting, and child is a child, whether they're from an older generation or from a younger generation. And this is a problem. When we don't understand our children, when we don't understand what sort of generation they come from, and the challenges of those of that generation, the problems of that generation, will come into a problem. Sometimes parents and their children, it's as if they live in two different planets. Children don't understand their parents, parents don't understand their children. They speak the same language, but two different cultures, two different customs. Many parents make the mistake of trying to raise their children the way their parents raised them. The same strategy, the same plan. whatever worked for their parents when they raised them back in Iraq and Lebanon and Afghanistan and Pakistan, they try to use the same exact method in 2024 with Generation Z in Sydney, Australia. It doesn't work that way. There's a hadith attributed to Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam at the end of Nahj al-Balagha, where the Imam says, لا تقصروا أولادكم على عاداتكم. Do not force your culture upon your children. I grew up with a certain culture, in a certain way, the way my parents raised me. Does that mean I can raise my children the same way that my parents raised me? Absolutely not. My parents raised me 40 years ago in a different country, with a different culture, different circumstances. When we grew up, there was no social media, there were no video games. Today, the entire world has changed. Every year, there's something new. Every year, there's new challenges. And it's becoming more difficult. لا تقصروا أولادكم على عاداتكم فإنهم خلقوا لزمان غير زمانكم. For they have been created for a time different from your time. Different from your time. We live in different times, different challenges. And this is a different generation. Gen Z, my dear friends, has certain qualities, and it's very important for parents or potential parents or for even youth themselves that fall into this category to understand the qualities of Generation Z. Number one, this generation is tech savvy. Everything's done online. No need for pens, no need for papers. They know how to get things done online, through their phone, book an appointment, fill out an application, do their homework, do their research. Everything's done online, pay their bills online. Get simple facts. This generation has something that the older generation didn't. Finding a simple fact. A simple fact. A couple of days ago, I was in Manchester, UK, and in a podcast, I was asked, what were your challenges when you became a speaker? 24, 25 years ago. I see a difference between speakers of 25 years ago and speakers today. Finding a single hadith could have taken us several days. Not a hadith. Finding a verse. Can you imagine? Today there's apps. You put in one word in a verse, and that app, one word from a verse in an app, and you'll immediately find that verse. Finding a verse was a challenge. Finding a hadith was a challenge. A story, anything to prepare a lecture was a challenge. Today, the new speakers of today, it's become easier for them. Growing up, we did not have ChatGPT. We didn't have Google. This is something new. Finding a piece of information for today's generation has become easy. Easy. Whether it's a historical fact, a saying, a historical figure, you can immediately look it up and you find it. They're tech savvy. Things have become easier. We live in the age of information, and Gen Z is tech savvy. Education has become online. There's no need for pens and notebooks and books. So this is a positive. And we also live in the age of the social media. Connection has become easy. You can speak to someone across the globe live. This never existed before. This is something positive. But this also comes with drawbacks. What are some of the drawbacks? Screen addiction. Growing up, we never had a problem of screen addiction. This generation has the problem of screen addiction. Their phones are in their hands all the time. If not an iPhone, then their iPads. Even kids. Kids starting from the age of 2, 3 years old, they have screen addiction. Even when they're sitting in the car, they can't enjoy the scenery. Even when they go to the most beautiful places, they have to have their phone in their hands. Or they're on YouTube. Or they're playing a game. Sometimes I'm on a flight and I see youth in their late 20s and they're playing games. Playing games. Although this is valuable time. Screen addiction, my dear friends. This is a problem. This is the problem of Gen Z. Always having the need to look up at their phone. And there are some youth, unfortunately, they don't come down. They don't sit with their parents. Previously, we used to gather 3 times a day, 3 meals. We'd sit together, we'd eat, we'd have discussions. This is gone existent. It's gone extinct. It's non-existent. No one sits on a meal together. Youth are stuck in their rooms, on their phones, on their gadgets, and that's it. No one sees them. They could sit for hours on their phones. This is a problem. This is a problem of this generation. And this can cause depression. Generation Z is most likely from all other generations to pick up depression and to be diagnosed with depression. Why? Because there's no personal interaction. They don't play sports any longer. They don't go out any longer. They're always on their phones and on their gadgets and on social media. Social media can never replace real life, my dear friends. Your friends on social media can never replace what you have today. Real friends. Real interaction, not social interaction on the media. 2, another problem that Generation Z has to deal with is low attention spans. Low attention spans. Previously, we would listen to a lecture for an hour and a half, sometimes even 2 hours. Today, the average attention span for our kids is 30 seconds. Why? Why? Because they're used to 30-second reels on TikTok and Instagram. And they're scrolling. They're constantly scrolling. 30 seconds. You want their attention, you have 30 seconds to relay the message. If you don't do it in 30 seconds, they're lost. You've lost them. This is a problem. How are you supposed to sit in a classroom and listen to a lecture for 45 minutes? How are you supposed to come to the masjid and listen to a lecture for 50 minutes, for an hour? How are you supposed to sit down with your parents and have a long, deep discussion or a conversation? This is a problem. Our generation did not have this, but our kids do. Our children do. They have screen addiction and they have low attention spans. And it has to be something colorful and it grabs their attention. Otherwise, you've lost their attention completely. This is a problem. A third problem, my dear friends, with Generation Z is that they don't read. They don't read. Books are becoming extinct. How many of us actually have books that we read before going to sleep, on a plane? And when I say read something of substance, not novels, not science fiction, not fiction. No, something of substance, something that's meaningful, something that has a theory, something that can be applied, something that you learn from. Otherwise, in the West, they read, but what do they read? No, they read fiction, or they read sci-fi, and there's bestsellers, and they make millions of dollars. But where does that get you? We stopped reading. This generation stopped reading a long time ago. Ever since these gadgets were introduced, our kids stopped reading. And by the way, you know, the makers of these gadgets, they don't allow their children to use them. They make these gadgets for you and me, my children and your children, not for their children. Because they know the amount of damage that it could do to their brains, their minds, their attention span. And if they do allow them to use it, it's limited. It's limited usage. It was done for us, not for them. To drain our pockets and to make money off of us. This generation doesn't read, my dear friends. This is a problem. What we must do as parents, as siblings of younger children, of youth, of potential parents, is that we encourage our children to read, our youth to read. Not just children, youth. Even those that are in their 20s, how many books have you read? I want you to think for a minute. Think to yourself, we're in December now. We're approaching a new year. In the year 2024, how many books did you read? I'm not going to ask you how many Islamic books. Just how many books did you read? 2, 3, 5, Ask yourself. Ask yourself, how many books did you read this year? We don't read. This is a problem. Let's encourage our kids to read. How do we encourage them? By having discussion circles, reading circles. We encourage the names of books. Read this book. I read it. It's a good book. You should read it. What do you think of it? We have book reviews. Give me a review of this book. This is something that we could do as youth organizations. We could have some youth come and summarize a book. You've read an interesting book. Summarize it to me in 45 minutes. Give me the most important points in this book. This encourages reading. This encourages reading. And as for reels, my dear friends, you see, we're not against technology. No. Some parents ask me that, should I get my children to delete TikTok? I say no. Why? Today you delete TikTok. Tomorrow there's going to be something else. And then something else. And then something else. You're just going to keep on deleting. You can't fight social media. You can't fight technology. Whether we like it or we don't, this is how we're going. What we can do is we can beat it. We can join the system and enhance it. Let me give you an example. 20 years ago, or less, more, I don't know. When YouTube came out, everyone thought YouTube was dangerous. Dangerous for our youth, dangerous for our kids. It could have haram material, it could have non-Islamic material, it could be very detrimental to our kids. But guess what? We made use of it. We made use of it. Go and look at the amount of lectures on YouTube, the amount of anasheed and latmiyat, and the recitation of Quran and supplications on YouTube. We made use of a system that could have possibly threatened the well-being of our youth. We made use of it to our advantage. Today, thousands and thousands of youth are being guided to Shia Islam, to Islam, through YouTube. There are thousands that are being guided to the school of thought of Ahlul Bayt because of YouTube. And we could do the same with reels. Yes, some reels could be detrimental. Either they contain music or they contain scenes that are not appropriate, but we could have replacements. We could have Islamic content on these reels. If we can't abolish the system, let's make use of the system that serves Islam and that serves the school of thought of Ahlul Bayt. طيب. Generation Z, my dear friends, another plus, another good attribute of this generation is that they are socially aware. They're aware of their surroundings, they're aware of politics, they're aware of what's happening. Why? Because everything's online. And we already mentioned that Generation Z is tech savvy. They know of what's happening online. They're aware. So right now, this generation is aware. Tell them what's happening in Syria, they'll give you the latest. What's happening in Gaza, they'll tell you the latest. Is there any racial injustice? They'll tell you. The BLM movement, Black Lives Matter, they're aware. The Me Too movement, they're aware. They're aware of these movements, these political, social movements. This is something positive. This is something good. We saw in America, in the United States of America, protests and rallies that supported Gaza. Who was participating? Who? It was Generation Z. It was the youth. It was college students. Most of them were not Muslim. Most of them did not speak Arabic. Yet they joined the rallies and the protests. Why? Because they're aware of their surrounding. Because they're tech savvy. They could see on their phones what the media doesn't portray on TV. What Fox News doesn't show them. Or what CNN doesn't show them, it comes to them on their phone. They see live footage. Or footage from Gaza or southern Lebanon. That is what got them to go out and protest on their campuses. And unfortunately, we saw the crackdown on these protests. In a country that claims to have freedom and freedom of speech, they cracked down on these youth. And many of them were non-Muslim. Many of them were non-Arab. This tells us that this generation is the most likely generation to be active and to do something about it. When they see injustice, they'll do something about it. When they see oppression, they'll do something about it. This generation is not meant to be silent. This generation speaks out and they make use of their voice. We have to help them do that. We have to facilitate that for them. Mobilize our youth. Today, our youth are full of energy, but they need direction. They need a sense of direction. How should they work? Politically, Islamically, socially. They need a sense of direction. That you need to be directed in this sort of, you need to be guided in this sort of direction. This is a cause worthy fighting for, and this is a cause not worthy fighting for. They're inspired, they're motivated, but they need direction. And we need to help as parents, as elders, as older siblings, as potential parents, we can help. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. A challenge that Generation Z faces and future generations. Perhaps my generation was better off. We also had such challenges, but you have it worse. You have it much worse. And that is the economic challenge. Wherever I go today, whether I come to Australia or the UK or the US or Canada, youth are complaining of high prices. Everything's becoming expensive. The cost of living quality life is becoming expensive. Gas prices, rent, owning a house. I heard from some of you here during this trip that owning a house here in Sydney is almost impossible. It's becoming almost impossible for our youth. Tayyib, what do our youth do? They like to get married. They'd like to start a family, have kids. There's economic challenges. Prices are skyrocketing. Travel has become very expensive. Moving out of the house, owning your private house, owning your own house is a challenge. And this obviously causes stress and anxiety. A lot of our youth from Generation Z have anxiety. They worry for the future. They worry for the future of their families. How are they supposed to get married, have children, and live a decent life? This is a problem. And as we move forward, these challenges will only increase. The economic challenges will only increase. We came out of a pandemic. There's wars all around. Gas prices are going up. This is a challenge, economic challenge. Not enough jobs. The job market is very difficult, is very competitive. What do we do? First of all, our youth have to have faith in Allah Azza wa Jal. Number one, Allah is the provider. Don't ever think that a day will come where you'll have to extend your hand to anyone. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been providing you for the past 20 years, 22 years, 25 years, 23 years, and He will continue. So don't worry. There's no reason to stress. There's no reason to have anxiety. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the provider. You have to know this and be certain of this. Be certain that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the provider. Two, we have to encourage our youth not to slack off, to study, to gain a proper education, a good education. There's no time to slack off, my dear friends. There's no time to take a break. Let me take a break, try to see what my passion is, or what I'd like to do, maybe take a year off or 2 years off. No. You have absolutely no time to take off. You don't have that leisure of taking time off of school or college or university. No. Do your best in school. Get the best grades. Go in the best fields. Any field. And we don't restrict you to a certain field. Previously, in previous generations, they restrict their children to 3 fields: engineering, medicine, and law. No. I say go in any field that you have a passion for. And as parents, we should not restrict our children to a certain field. Perhaps I want my son to become a doctor. Oh, that's my personal desire, but I can't force him. I want my daughter to become a lawyer, for example. I can't force her. I can't force my views and opinions on my kids. I have to see what their passion is. What their passion is. I say to the dear youth, go after your passion. Whatever your passion is, as long as it's halal, as long as you're not breaking any Islamic laws, go seek your passion and be the best that you could be. Be the best that you could be. Whatever it is that you want to be, but be the top. Be the number one. And make money. Make money, yes. This is an Islamic value. Islam doesn't tell you that, no, live a small life, even settle for a small salary. Who told you to settle for a small salary? No. Go out and make big. Big money. Help yourself and help your family members here and abroad. Help your Islamic institutions. Help the poor. Help the needy. Aim high. Think big. Go into business. This year in Muharram, I gave a lecture titled The Importance of Independence in Islam. Independence as an individual, independence as a family, independence as a masjid, independence as a marji'iyya, and independence as a state. It starts from independence as an individual. Islam encourages commerce and business, at-tijara. Istihbab at-tijara. We have sections in Al-Kafi and Wasa'il al-Shi'a titled Istihbab at-tijara. It is recommended to do business. How many of our youth have gone into business? Go into business. Become independent. Don't let anyone tell you what to do. If you're an employee, fine, that's fine. But aim to have your own business. This is what Islam encourages us. One of the companions of Imam al-Sadiq, he tells him, Ya ibn Rasulullah, I'm doing well. Financially, I'm doing well. Should I stop doing business? Should I stop doing tijara? The Imam says, no, continue. Doing tijara, doing business increases your aql, increases your reason. Go out. It's a world of opportunity. You live in the country of opportunity. Go out. Start a business. Do good. There's no reason to complain. Oh, well, we live in bad economic times and the future is uncertain and we're not doing well and I'm thinking of moving. Moving where? Where do you want to go? What do you think is a better place? We always tend to think those who live in the East, they think living in the West is the best. Life is perfect in the West. If I move to the West, all of my problems are solved. Those who are in the West, they think if I move to the East, all of my problems are solved and it's perfect. As they say, the grass is always greener on the other side. It's not that case. You could live perfectly where you are, but it depends on your determination. Are you determined or are you not determined? Do you have the self-determination to help yourself and your family and raise your children in a proper way? You could live anywhere. It's not about moving. When you move, that means you've given up. When you move, that means you don't have a strong will. And you've given up and you're looking for somewhere else. And believe me, you're going to move again and again and again. Live your life to the fullest. Have faith in Allah Azza wa Jal. Tawakkal ala Allah. Depend on Allah and you can make it. Also, my dear friends, and this is a piece of advice to my dear brothers and sisters from Gen Z. Spend economically. Today, our kids are spending as if there's no tomorrow. They're given a credit card. You know, when your parents give you a credit card, it doesn't mean khalas. You get to buy the entire world. You go to the mall and buy everything that you see. No, it's just meant to buy the things that you need only. Spend economically. Learn to raise. If you don't need these shoes, don't buy those shoes. If you don't need this watch, don't buy that watch. Spend economically. Otherwise, you will get yourself in trouble. إِنَّ الْمُبَذِّرِينَ كَانُوا إِخْوَانَ الشَّيَاطِينَ. Those who waste, those who spend wastefully are like the brothers of shaitan. The verse says, وَلَا تَجْعَلْ يَدَكَ مَغْلُولَةً إِلَىٰ عُنُقِكَ وَلَا تَبْسُطْهَا كُلَّ الْبَسْطِ فَتَقْعُدَ مَلُومًا مَحْسُورًا. Don't put your hands to your neck, meaning what? You don't spend at all. Nor do you extend your hand fully and you spend. No. Be moderate when it comes to expending. Today, our youth don't know how to spend moderately. They spend fully, non-economically. And then they complain, I can't raise money to buy a house. I can't raise money to buy a car. Obviously, when you're wasting your money, this is what happens. طيب. Another quality about Generation Z, my dear friends, is that they do not take orders. They don't take orders. They wish to understand everything. This generation has the desire to understand. They ask questions. They have inquisitive minds. When they tell you, why is this halal, why is this haram, it doesn't mean they're objecting. It doesn't mean they don't believe. But they'd like to understand. You know what? Even prophets would ask questions. Even prophets, sometimes, they would ask questions. Ibrahim alayhi salam told Allah, Ilahi, arini kayfa tuhyi al-mawta. Oh Allah, show me how you resurrect the dead. Imagine, Ibrahim, one of our greatest prophets, he wanted to see how Allah would resurrect the dead. قال أولم تؤمن? Do you not believe? Do you think that I cannot resurrect the dead? قال بلى. I do. ولكن ليطمئن قلبي. I do believe, but I want to be certain. This generation asks questions. They don't like yes or no answers. Is this halal? Yes. Is this haram? No. And that's it. No. You have to have an explanation for them. You have to be able to explain to them why. When you tell them music is haram, explain to them why music is haram. When you tell them you cannot eat at non-Islamic restaurants, why? Don't just tell them it's haram. Why? Explain. Explaining is something very important. Try to make sense to them. Make reason to them. Yes, maybe my generation, we were bossed around. Don't do this, do this. This is halal, this is haram. Get up and pray, sleep. Oh, the way my parents raised me, perhaps it was successful 40 years ago, but not today. Not today. Today when I tell my children that music is haram, I have to explain to them why. Just to tell them that Sayyid so-and-so says it's haram, it's not enough. Or the fatwa says it's haram, it's not enough. It requires explanation. You see, this generation, and allow me to say this, is a bit spoiled. They don't take yes and no answers. You can't yell at them or shout at them and boss them around. No, there needs to be explanation. You have to pray, طيب, but why? What's the reason that I have to pray 5 times a day? Why can't I pray 1 time a day? Why do I have to pray the 5 daily prayers at their own times? Why can't they gather all the prayers and pray them at the end of the day? It's a logical question. It's a reasonable question that requires a reasonable answer. And the answer, for example, is that can you take your phone and when it loses charge, you charge it 5 times at once and so that it remains charged the entire day? No. You charge your phone whenever it loses battery. Sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times a day, depending on the type of phone that you have. You charge it several times a day. It requires to be charged. Salah does the same for us. Salah charges us spiritually. You need to give such sort of answers. Logical answers. And you can't really do that if parents haven't read. If you're a young parent and you lack education and knowledge of Islam, how are you expected to teach your children? This puts a responsibility on the shoulders of parents to study and learn as well. To give appropriate answers to their children. Some, they say, no, well, we have majalis, alhamdulillah. We have the scholars. We have all of the sayyids and sheikhs in the community. They will teach our children. I'll bring my children to the majlis and that's enough. No. My dear friends, majalis are full of barakah and blessings, and we learn from them. But these majalis, they're not a miracle. There are parents who let their children loose. They give them complete freedom, and then they expect their children to transform within 3 nights of Fatimiya, or the 10 nights of Muharram, or several nights of Ramadan. No. Scholars don't have a miracle stick where they'll transform your children. You've forgotten your responsibility towards your children and you expect the alim, the scholar, to perform a miracle all of a sudden. I have a lot of parents that come and say, Sayyid, please, you have to help me with my child. What do you want me to do? You've neglected your duties as a father, as a mother, and now you want me to press a button or read a spell or recite a dua and your child becomes al-Muqaddas al-Ardabili all of a sudden, a saint or a scholar? That's impossible. You've neglected your child. Another issue with Generation Z is that we have to attempt to understand them. Don't just assume. I tell this to dear parents, that don't assume how your child is feeling. Try to understand them. Try to talk to them. Your child is being rebellious, doesn't listen, doesn't take orders, speaks back, has a sharp tongue. Maybe there's a reason. Maybe there's a reason. Maybe they're not doing so well in school. Maybe they're being bullied. Maybe they have an issue. Maybe they have a problem. Maybe there's a drug problem. Try to understand, but calmly, gently. Some parents are not easy to approach. Maybe the children, they like to have a discussion with their parents. Parents are not easy to approach. If the father is angry all the time and he cares less for his children and he's more obsessed about what's happening in Syria now and could care less about his child, this is a problem. Be easy to approach. Let your children come to you, speak to you. Have a real conversation with them. Refrain from judging them. Refrain from comparing this generation to your generation. You know, a lot of us as parents, we tell our kids, you know what? When I was your age, never use this word, when I was your age. As soon as you start saying when I was your age, you're comparing your children to your generation. You're comparing your children to you. And this is wrong. This is wrong. We were raised in a different context, in a different country, in a different generation. Our children come from a different generation. Never start off a sentence by saying, when I was your age. When you were my age, so what? You lived in a different generation. You had your challenges, I have my challenges. There were two different types of challenges. Yes, you can tell stories. You can tell stories from the past. You can try to teach your children from the past, but stop comparing. Don't tell them that when I was your age, I would spend $2 a day, and you're spending $30 a day. This is things have changed. Become their friends. Be easy to talk to. Don't be intimidating. I think that the most successful parents are those who are friends with their children. Friends. Literally friends. Where they sit with their children and they can laugh and discuss and have a discussion. Act like friends. Not act. Be. It's not a matter of acting. It's a matter of being their friends. Joking with them. Talking about their challenges. When you become your child's friend, that means you're a successful parent. Of course, you maintain the level of respect. And you maintain the level of obedience and respect. But you don't live higher above your children where you're intimidating, where they're afraid of approaching you, where they're afraid of telling you. Let them tell you anything of any problem. Be easy to approach. Some of our parents were scared to tell them certain things. If I'm going through a problem, I'm afraid to tell my father. I don't know how he'll react. Will he kick me out of the house? Will he beat me? What will he do? I don't know. This is wrong. Let's be a sort of way where whatever my child says, my son or daughter tells me, I will sit and I will have a real discussion, a fruitful discussion. And there's no red lines. There's no red lines. Also, my dear friends, setting rules. We need to set rules, especially when it comes to the usage of phones. We talked in the beginning regarding screen addiction. This is a problem, but it requires a solution. The solution comes into putting restrictions. For example, we encourage no phone atmospheres. For example, during dinner. During family gatherings, no one takes out their phone. No one goes on social media. On Sundays, for example, there's a time, there's a place in which no one uses the phone, and we enforce this law. This is positive. This is important. Not just phones, iPads as well. Get them away. Several hours a day. Put limits. Put limits. Maybe 1 hour a day of iPad usage. 2 hours a day on the weekends, for example. And be the first to implement. We as parents, we tell our children, don't use your phones, but we're the first to use them. Don't sit on your gadgets, and we're the first to use them. Try to avoid screen addiction, and we have screen addiction. We can't do that. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لما تقولون ما لا تفعلون. Don't preach something and you practice something else. Because our children, they learn from our actions, not our words. My dear friends, our children ultimately, they will learn from our actions, not our words. And if they see a contradiction between our words and our actions, they will take from our actions, not our words. Another very sensitive issue that comes to Generation Z, وصلوا على محمد وآل محمد. And that is the topic of sexuality. This previously didn't exist. In previous generations, this didn't exist. Today, kids at school, Generation Z, they're being taught about sexuality. They're being taught that it's your choice whether you'd like to be a male or a female, or neither or both. It's your choice. You could be a male in the morning, you could be a female in the afternoon. You could be a female in the morning, you could be a male in the afternoon. The choice is yours. This is what they're being taught. This is one. Regarding gender. And then regarding sexuality as well. They're being taught that two men together is fine. It's completely fine. Two women together, that's completely fine. There's a propaganda. They're going after our children. They're indoctrinating them. Even when it comes to movies for kids. Even Disney movies, they're indoctrinating. They have one character that falls in line with what we just said. At least one. Even Avengers, even their superheroes. Kids who look up to these superheroes, all of a sudden they discover that Superman, you know what I mean. This is a problem. How do we deal with this? Previously, we didn't have to deal with this issue. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we were not afraid of children being indoctrinated. Today, we are afraid for our children, putting them in school today. This is a problem of Generation Z. You see, my dear friends, we have to address this at home and very carefully. You have to be very careful of what you say and how you say it, because this could get you in trouble. This could get you in trouble with the law, with the school, and ultimately it could cause to have your children being taken away from you. So you have to be very careful what you tell them. The words that you use, you have to be very careful. But at the same time, you must explain to them Islam's take on sexuality, Islam's take on homosexuality, Islam's take on gender, changing gender. You explain to them in a rational, positive, calm manner. And you explain to them Islam's take, for example, on gender, that Islam believes in two genders, a male and a female. Khalas. This is scientific. This is science. This is what science teaches us. Science doesn't say that gender is neutral or is non-binary or that you get to choose or there's various kinds of genders. No, there's two genders. And this is science. You're either born as a male or a female. You explain to them rationally, logically. And if God forbid, if there's a rare case in which we have a youth in our community that does fall into this trap, that falls into this issue of changing their gender or their sexuality, you don't deal with it with threats. You make threats or you break down, you have a nervous breakdown and you threaten to commit suicide as parents. No. You remain calm. You remain collected. And you speak to them. You speak to their minds. You speak to their hearts. And you deal with it gently, calmly. You don't over-exaggerate. You don't use violence. You don't break down your nerves and you become emotional. This is something very dangerous and it's something very sensitive. And it's something likely as well. It's something very likely. When you're on the plane and they give you instructions that in case of an emergency, this is what you do. You put on your vest, oxygen. Why do they do this? Why do they do this? Because there's 1 out of a million chance that something will happen. And here too, there's maybe 1 out of a million that this sort of case can happen. We have to know what to do. And we don't get angry and we don't lose our minds, but we deal with it peacefully and gently. Again, I say that we teach our children through our actions, my dear friends, not our words. And this is how Fatimiya Zahra, salamullahi alayha, would parent. She would parent not by words, but by actions. When Al-Hasan wal-Hussein, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhima, they fell ill and their parents had the nadhr, the vow, to fast. They fasted for 3 days. And at the time of iftar, when the poor person came at the door, Fatimiya Zahra, without saying a word, she collected the loaves of bread and she offered it to the poor. On the second day of fasting, at the time of iftar, an orphan comes and she collects the loaves of bread and she offers it to the poor. On the third day, a prisoner of war comes to them at the time of iftar. She collects the loaves of bread and she gives it to the poor. She taught by actions, not by words. وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ لَا نُرِيدُ مِنْكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا. This is how she taught. One day, Imam al-Hasan, alayhi salam, he says, I woke up in the middle of the night and I saw my mother, Fatimiya Zahra, praying Salat al-Layl in the middle of the night. And I saw her praying for this person, that person, mentioning names in Salat al-Layl, praying for them, praying for their forgiveness. When she finished her salah, he said, my mother, I saw you praying for so many people, but you did not mention your own name. You didn't pray for yourself, you prayed for others. She said, Waladi al-Hasan, al-Jar, thumma ad-Dar. Our neighbor, and then yourself. Think of others first. Think of your neighbor first, and then think of yourself first. You see, Fatimiya Zahra alayhi salam taught by actions, not by words. She taught by actions. During the last 10 nights of the holy month of Ramadan, hadith tell us that Fatimiya Zahra would gather the beds. There were no more beds in the house of Fatima. That means there was no more sleeping, only taking naps, perhaps while sitting, not even lying down. This is how she taught her children how to behave in Ramadan, especially the last 10 nights of Ramadan, that there's no more sleep, only dua, only supplication, only recitation of the Holy Quran. طيب. Fatimiya Zahra, salamullahi alayha, what happened to her after the attack on the door, the attack on her house, as we recited last night? Fatimiya Zahra would come to the grave of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. She would come to the grave of her father Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, and she would complain to him of what this ummah, this nation has done to her and to her husband and to her family. She would grab some sand from the grave of Rasulullah, she'd smell it. She'd smell the odor of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. ماذا على من شم تربة أحمد أن لا يشم مدى الزمان غواليا صبت علي مصائب لو أنها صبت على الأيام صرنا لياليا. Fatimiya Zahra would spend her nights and days crying. The people of Medina came to Amir al-Mu'mineen. They told him, Ya Ali, your wife Fatima, she doesn't let us sleep at night nor work during the day. Tell Fatima she either cries at night or cries during the day. She can't cry both. When she cries during the day, we cannot work. When she cries during the night, we cannot sleep. Amir al-Mu'mineen built a house outside of Medina for his wife Fatima so that she may go and mourn her father in that house. That house was called Bayt al-Ahzan. From morning she would hold the hands of Al-Hasan wal-Hussein and go to this house, Bayt al-Ahzan, and she would remain in that house and weep and cry for her father until night. قامك يا ابويا ما رعاني وخلاف عينك مرمراني وبر المدينة طلعوني ومن البكي عليك امنعاني ومن البكي عليك عميان عيوني يا أبا ورا الباب لما هيسوني للحايط وليه عصروني يا أبا كسروا ضلعي وسقطوني. Finally, Fatima Zahra alayha salam, she asks Fidda, she told her that I would like to say my will to my husband Amir al-Mu'mineen, but it is very sensitive. I'd like you to have Al-Hasan wal-Hussein outside of the house. Amir al-Mu'mineen comes to Fatima. She tells her that I have to say my will to you. Will you handle my will? He says, of course, my lady, tell me as you wish, and you will see that I will respect your wishes, I will respect your commands. أوصيك أن لا يشهد أحد جنازتي من هؤلاء الذين ظلموني. She tells him, Ya Ali, I ask you that none of my oppressors witness my funeral. Make sure that none of them participate and bury me at night. Wash me at night. Don't let any of them know where I'm buried. Amir al-Mu'mineen receives this very sensitive will. وَادْفِنِّي فِي اللَّيْلِ إِذَا هَدَأَتِ الْعُيُونِ ونامت الأبصار ولي من دنت منها المنية حضر عدها الوصية بوقت الوصية تقل ادنو يا بعد الروح ليا دنا ليها ومن عند الدمع خار. She said her farewell. She said her will. Amir al-Mu'mineen leaves to the masjid. Asma bint Umays, she sees that Fatima Zahra becomes silent after remembering Allah, being busy in the remembrance of Allah. She becomes silent. She comes to her, Ya Sayyidati, Ya Fatima, Ya Sayyida. She does not receive a reply. She finds out that Fatima's soul had departed her body. She throws herself on Fatima. Give my salam to your father, Rasulullah. She covers Fatima Zahra. She covers her body. Moments later, Al-Hasan wal-Hussein enter the house. Asma comes to them. My children, my sons, your food is ready. Come and eat. Al-Hasan wal-Hussein immediately they asked, Aina ummuna Fatima? She says, your food is ready. Again they asked, Aina ummuna Fatima? She told her, your food is ready, your lunch is ready. Al-Hasan said, Ya Asma, when have you ever seen us eat with our mother Fatima? We always eat with her. Here Al-Hasan realized what was happening. He rushed to the house and he saw the body of his mother Fatima. His brother Al-Hussein, he rushes to him. They come to her body. Imam Al-Hasan throws himself on the body of Fatima Zahra and he says, Ummah, kallimini qabla an tanfajira mararati fa'amut. My mother, speak to me before I die. As for Imam Al-Hasan, he puts the feet of his mother onto his cheeks. He brushes her feet onto his cheeks, and he says, Ummah kallimini fa ana waladuki al-Hussein. My mother, speak to me, this is your son Hussein.